Hello, my name is Paul Marchbanks, and this is Digging in the Dirt. Today I'm going to share some reflections on Alfred Hitchcock's 1948 film, Rope. In Friedrich Nietzsche's Also Sprach Zarathustra, his prophet hero takes aim at quite a few things. Self-complacent reason, which does not long for new knowledge, any form of justice that diminishes instead of increasing one's own zeal for life, and traditional systems of virtue that he believes decrease passion. At the heart of his critique is what Zarathustra calls despisers of the body, those who would curtail pleasure in the name of morality. Echoing the likes of poet Walt Whitman and art critic Walter Pater, Nietzsche writes, "Body am I entirely, and nothing more, and soul is only the name of something in the body." For thinkers like these, the impulses of the body and the passions it generates are a kind of doctrine in and of themselves, one that should lead the mind by the hand, since presumably there is no soul, no divinely appointed conscience, and most certainly no God to either judge or grant clemency. Where Whitman at least celebrates a diverse array of able bodies in an effort to counter rampant racism and sexism in his day, Nietzsche admits parity of no kind whatsoever. Men are not equal, Zarathustra declares memorably, calling those who preach egalitarianism tarantulas, and promoting in their stead those others who recognize the necessity of the Übermensch, the overhuman, who need not be limited by others' small minds and restrictive ethical systems. Together with Francis Galton's argument in Hereditary Genius that genetic variability constitutes an evil inheritance that should be eliminated by way of segregation and selective breeding, such strains of thought galvanized eugenic ambitions at the turn of the century, giving rise to sterilization of individuals presumed unfit for parenthood in America and the wide-scale elimination of undesirables in Nazi Germany. Well before Hitler's rise to power, there were others convinced that demonstrating their own superiority required flagrantly countering those tired old moral constructs that would discourage murder. In 1924, two rich kids with enviable academic pedigrees decided to prove their supposed superiority by kidnapping and murdering a 14-year-old boy. Nathan Leopold and Richard-Loeb, two schoolfellows at the University of Chicago, believed themselves Übermensch, with an inborn right to do as they wished, though their intellects could not keep them from getting caught. Their notorious crime disturbed the public imagination, inspired a play by Patrick Hamilton, the author of Gaslight, and led to the production of the first of 4 films by Alfred Hitchcock to star Jimmy Stewart. Hitchcock's Rope dismantles these young men's arrogance in a few ways during the dinner party which occurs immediately following the murder. To begin, the screenplay by Arthur Lawrence and Ben Hecht quickly introduces fissures in their facade, fault lines that widen the longer they try to keep their cool. Philip, who tightened the rope around poor David's neck in the opening, cracks first, and often. His emotions overflow during private moments with David, and his hands unconsciously constrict at inopportune times, though his smooth words cover his nervousness to all but the most discerning party guests. Brandon dances around the topic of his recent crime, veering dangerously, arrogantly close to a confession in ways that unsettle his partner. Grand-sounding theories about superior human specimens and their inherent right to act on aggressive impulses, words echoed by their visiting former housemaster, begin to lose any spice they may have had once they are chewed on in polite company. Even Brandon, the criminal mastermind, begins to falter when asked searching questions, struggling to concoct a deft response that sounds natural and unaffected. The conspirators' underlying tension emerges slowly to their party guests, but more swiftly to an audience that never takes its eyes off the culprits. Hitchcock does something quite unique at this point in film history. He shoots it in real time and edits the film so that it feels like one uninterrupted take. Every 10 minutes, either a quick shot reverse shot hides the switch from one camera to another, or the camera pans to a character's back, allowing the crew to switch out the full 35mm reel for a new reel. The Motion Picture Production Code of 1930 was still in full force at this time, preventing filmmakers from including salacious dialogue and gruesome visuals, the sort of elements that will appear in later films like Hitchcock's Psycho and Frenzy. Instead of forcing us to see and hear such gross details, the film opens with the tail end of a rather antiseptic strangulation. Hitchcock instead holds our cinematic gaze as wide open as Alex DeLarge's eyes in A Clockwork Orange, demanding that we join the director in continuous surveillance as two murderers' best-laid plans begin to slowly unravel. You've probably heard of the overhead shot in film, in which a camera on the ceiling or in the sky captures a scene directly below it. Filmmakers often refer to this as a bird's eye or God's eye shot, and with good reason. It captures an angle unlikely for humans to experience directly unless they're suspended in air on a tall crane or a slow-moving hot air balloon. It often conveys the perspective of one who knows much more about what's really happening than those characters on the ground. The establishing shot of the town in Lars von Trier's Dogville, for instance, provides attentive viewers a sense of not only how small and impoverished this Colorado community truly is, but of how they are simultaneously insulated from the surrounding world and laid bare to one another. The clearly articulated lines of white tape, which replace walls and doors in this strange film, underscore the futility of any efforts at privacy. In Mel Gibson's The Passion of the Christ, the crucifixion of Jesus ends with a God's eye shot from gathering clouds that capture the slow descent of a single drop of rain, a small bead of water heralding an impending earthquake and signaling the sorrow of a caring divine presence watching this murder from above. Keeping the film camera's shutter constantly open is another way to convey the perspective of an all-knowing presence. The challenges involved have severely limited the number of films shot this way. Lighter cameras and digital technology now make it easier to conjure the illusion of a single continuous shot, but it's still an incredible technical feat when stitched together well. The action must be carefully choreographed for the sake of the actors, camera crew, and lighting technicians. There's little room for human error. And yet, human fallibility is precisely what's on display and implicitly critiqued in a film about murder where the camera never blinks, particularly a work like Hitchcock's Rope, in which the main characters remain on the film's single set for 80 minutes straight. Though the camera occasionally veers away from these two men, the audience tracks the strained voices of the two lovers. They were more obviously queer in the play, even when they're just out of the frame to the side. At no point do they step onto a balcony or take a bathroom break to collect themselves. Instead, the audience is allowed, no, compelled, to closely track their practiced nonchalance as it stretches to a breaking point. Hitchcock's camera work also highlights the fragility of their amoral position by capturing elements of artifice we might otherwise overlook. The wainscoting in the foyer is more obviously fake because the camera lingers on it. And the oversaturated, very bright hues of the film, this was the director's first use of Technicolor, drive home the impossibility of ever permanently hiding dark deeds in the shadows of a Hitchcock thriller. One of the most egregious bits of cinematic subterfuge for me, as I have taught piano for decades, is the counterfeit finger movements of Philip as he tickles the ivories. Hitchcock makes no effort to hide the fact that the actor, Farley Granger, cannot actually play. I've always been very impressed by actors like Ryan Gosling and Andrew Garfield, who took piano lessons for a given role, allowing the camera to crawl slowly over the keys instead of having to hide an actor's musical inexperience. Hitchcock does not want his audience to emerge from the film feeling empowered to murder those they consider a waste of space. In this respect, at least, his film does everything it can to uphold law and order. What do you think? In an age of overpopulation and selective abortion, does eugenics deserve a better shake than it receives here? Or does Hitchcock rightly carve an indelible line in stone?